Hello, and you are very welcome to the Social Media News Show with me, your host, Joanne Sweeney, coming to you from Public Sector Marketing Institute. And as always, for our monthly update of what is happening in the world of social media, I am joined by Andy Lambert from Content Cal. Andy, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Joanne. How are you?
I'm really good. But before we get into social, I just want to say congratulations to you guys over at Content Cal. You had a major announcement in the last 30 days since I saw you last. Do you want to share it with us?
Thanks for the prompt and I appreciate it. So we just raised a £6.2 million investment in the business. Which means from our kind of humble UK orientated beginnings in a garage, it's taken the business from 45 employees that is now growing to 100 employees, opening an office in Austin. Hopefully tripling the size of our customer base. That's the plan. That's what we need to achieve. But lots of pressure, lots of new challenges, but a very significant milestone. So very pleased.
Well, it's a real investment in social media also and digital marketing when you guys are getting that level of investment, right?
Indeed it is. So it's great to see like the recognition of others outside of the industry recognizing that the growth of businesses will happen on social. So they can see the future. It's a busy market we operate in already, but there's a lot of money in this market just because they know investors can see where the market is going, and where, as we'll be talking about over the next kind of 40 or so minutes, the trajectory of social media is just phenomenal at the moment. So very much in the right space, it feels.
Well, listen, that's a perfect segue. Let's get into what's been happening in the world of social media over the last 30 days since we have spoken last. So I'll invite you to share your screen and we can kick.
Perfect. All right. So let me just dive straight in and start sharing. And great. Let's do it. So hello again if you're joining for another time, because we run this every single month, and thank you, Joanne, and your community for having me again. So as a bit of background, so I'm Andy. I'm one of the founders of a company called Content Cal, which is a product that looks like this, content marketing tool. But the reason that I'm here talking today really is just to talk about all of the trends and the changes and the things that are happening in the world of social, because we live and breathe social. We've built our business on the platforms. So it's our job to try and understand as much as we possibly can about what's happening within the world. So there are three things we're going to be covering in this session. We're going to look at some data, and there's some interesting data points that have come throughout the course of May that I really wanted to share with you. So that's point one, the collection of data that I found that will be helpful in kind of informing your strategy. So that's point one. Point two, we'll look at some trends. We don't have too much of that this month, actually, because we're so heavy on the data. And then the third piece is around all of the individual updates that have come to all of the social media platforms. And the key objective of today's session is not to overwhelm you with all of the things that are changing. It's more to give you an opportunity to make you feel like you're on top of what's happening in the world of social. You know all the things you need to know, and then you can make informed choices and tweaks to your strategy using data as a baseline for making those decisions. So hopefully should empower you with a bit of knowledge and insight to evolve your social media strategies to the next level. So let's dive in. Quick time check to make sure I don't overrun, and let's begin with the data. Most downloaded apps, so this is global data. So naturally, as you would expect, TikTok is leading the charge for that. But our old faithful Facebook isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So lots of people like to bash Facebook, but it's still topping rankings, even though it's now, I was about to say, 15 years old. So it's still absolutely there, and it's still leading the way for monthly active users. But the thing that I really wanted to show you today in terms of data is some of the organic and paid social media benchmarks. So some of this data might be slightly counter to what you might believe or think at the moment. And of course, if your own data tells you something different, use your own data and use your own gut. But if you want to look at what the other outside of your business is doing, so this can be useful. So this is some data from a company called Social Bakers, which is our social media tech platform. What they looked at is the top 50 brands on Instagram and Facebook. The top 50 they defined by the amount of followers. So then they've looked at what is the most engaging post format. So over on the top here, top left, you can see Facebook organic interactions by post type. So interactions, basically like shares, comments, etc. Engagement, we might call it. Very interestingly, Facebook Live beats everything by the amount of engagement. That is counter to what I would have thought. And it's actually very interesting. It kind of tells a good story because Facebook are investing a lot more into Facebook Live, as we'll come on to talk about. So it's very interesting to see how much extra engagement Facebook Live has driven compared to the other post formats. The other post formats seem to be pretty consistent across link, image, status, which is text only, or video posts. And the interesting thing to call out here, because this backs up some data that I've seen previously as well from other sources, is that video posts on non-native video platforms, and what I mean by that is, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn are non-native video platforms. They weren't built with video in mind, unlike YouTube and TikTok, for example. Video posts on non-native video platforms tend to perform worse than any other post format, and I've seen this a lot. So the interesting thing to note here is that don't bend over backwards to create video content, no matter how much people might be pressuring to say it's all about video. Yes, video is an important part of a strategy, but fundamentally it's not going to suddenly drive engagement for you. In fact, it underperforms. If you look at Instagram, you can see video underperforms as well, certainly relative to image, but also particularly relative to carousel posts, which lead the way as most engaging. And that backs up other data that I've seen as well, so I can well believe that. Talking about post length, now we've understood the post format. Interestingly, there's kind of an inverted bell curve when it comes to the length of the post. This is specifically about Instagram. Unfortunately, there was no data pertaining to this on Facebook and LinkedIn, and how I wish I'd get the LinkedIn one, because that's the platform I actually care most about anyway. But the thing is that there's an interesting balance of this. Naturally, don't be afraid of longer form posts. This is quite encouraging for that. That there is a good degree of balance. For your real detailed posts, there is appetite for people to engage with those posts. So don't be put off to say it has to be a certain character length. It really doesn't. Provided the content is rich and interesting, going long is fine. But naturally, you'll see the predominance of engagement built around short form content. As you can see, under 50 characters, which is a tiny amount of text relative to an image. So yeah, hopefully that can help kind of inform your strategies a little bit on that one. Either go short, or if you've got a lot of detail, don't be afraid to go long. Fewer hashtags often perform better. Wow. This will blow a fair few people's minds, this one, because the amount of things that get written and I read about hashtag strategy, the amount of hashtags you should include for your Instagram content. Should you put it in your body of the copy, or should you put it in your first comment? Fundamentally, looking at this data, none of that matters, because the top performing posts typically have 0 hashtags, which is very interesting. So this is remember, we're looking only at the top 50 brands on social, but typically they should be the ones kind of leading the way. So that's very interesting, because we see at Content Cow lots of people using multiple hashtags per post, because naturally we have millions of posts passing through our platform every single month. And sometimes I see people, using 30, 40 hashtags, which is it's just nuts. The whole post is made up of hashtags. And, the effort it takes to do that, it doesn't seem to yield any return. The best thing you can do, and what this data is telling us, is 1 or 2 well thought out hashtags will be a route to success on that. So yeah, interesting analysis, as I said, might be counter to some of your own personal analysis on this matter. LinkedIn stories. So this is just an individual's narrative on this, but it's a chap I follow on LinkedIn, and if you're interested in LinkedIn and if that's your platform, I'd recommend following this guy called John Esperian, because I'm a kind of data nerd. He's my LinkedIn go-to guy. So naturally, this data doesn't have too much balance to it, because it's one individual's perspective on the matter, although I can back it up from my own personal experience. So he has 34,000 followers on LinkedIn on his personal profile, and he has about 1,000 followers on his company page. And as you can see from the amount of viewers in comparison to the amount of followers on stories, very, very low. Basically, the short answer to this data is, are LinkedIn stories worth it? Based on this evidence and also based on my personal experience, not at the moment. So there was a little peak when LinkedIn stories were released about a year ago, but that peak seems to have diminished as well, because discovery of stories is still so difficult. They're only within the mobile app, where the majority of LinkedIn usage is on the desktop. So you can probably strike that one off your list for now. So don't worry too much about LinkedIn stories. Anyway, so that's some interesting stuff regarding organic social. But let's look at paid social, because yeah, this is very much, the time has come again for paid social at the moment, and we are very much in the boom time. So Agency Group M, which is a large agency, part of the WPP network, so the biggest ad agency network on the planet, they saw digital media grow by 7% in 2020, which is okay. Definitely was curtailed for, or that growth was capped for reasons that I think we all know. But now we're projecting 22% growth this year, which is substantial. I don't need to tell you that. And the bit that is slightly depressing in terms of the duopoly of Google and Facebook making up 87% of that growth, which is frankly astounding. But where is all that growth going? So global social media ad spend is growing 60% year on year. So there is a huge drive in the usage of it. So naturally it went crazy in December, that's when we usually see a spike or a peak in global social media ad spend. So in December, so obviously dropped back in January, but you can see that from an average perspective is way up from where it used to be. So that data is definitely, both of these data points are bearing out where we're expecting to see 22% growth in 2021. So year on year growth at 60%. So substantial. Lots of people advertising again. But costs of advertising, unfortunately, are rising in parallel. So this is driven by two factors. One, lots of advertisers flood to the market. That drives up costs per acquisition, CPCs, etc. Basically advertising costs. And the other thing that's driving this up is all of the furore that's happening with iOS 14.5. Basically, as if you have an iPhone, once you've done that kind of software update to be on the latest operating system on your iPhone, you'll have noticed that whenever you go to Instagram and Facebook, it'll say, oh, do you want this app to track you? Or any app you go in, not just Instagram and Facebook, but for the purposes of what we're talking about today, Instagram and Facebook. And the data is saying only 3% of people are opting in to allow that app to track, which means these apps, Facebook and Instagram, have zero data to kind of base their decisions on. So naturally, it's more about just firing out as many ads as possible to see what sticks. Bad experience for the consumer, bad experience for the advertiser. So it's kind of a bit of a zero-sum game, this one. And that's naturally having a net increase in advertising costs. Where's that ad spend going? As you'd expect, so e-commerce, huge amount of advertising revenue going in there. Also in alcohol as well is the second biggest. I can probably well believe that. So final two bits of data. Facebook still continues to grow whilst it's flat in its kind of domestic market of the US. It's growing elsewhere, so usage up 10% year on year. Twitter's also had a storming year as well. The growth rates have outpaced Facebook as well. So this is, they're now at nearly 200 million daily active users. So people that log in every single day, 200 million of them. That is, I don't need to tell you, that's a lot. So one trend to show you, which is quite an interesting one, and it kind of denotes where the future trajectory of social is going. So more Gen Zers now use TikTok and Instagram. I don't really like generational generalizations, but hey, I think it's kind of well known, so we'll go with it. So what we're looking at here is the growth of Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, which are the three preferred platforms for Gen Z. So basically, this is helping us predict the future of social and where platform usage is growing. Because naturally, over time, as things evolve, it's the younger generation that will become the largest population on social. So you can basically, this is our forward trajectory and our prediction of saying, really, it's these three platforms that are going to reign supreme over the long term. Naturally, YouTube isn't in that because it hasn't been factored into this data. YouTube will actually absolutely remain as one of the big ones. In fact, it will continue to project to remain bigger than the rest of them. Anyway, the fact is, what I want to show you on this is that whilst Snapchat have grown tremendously, and we're going to talk about Snapchat later on, TikTok has just started to overtake Instagram, and you can see like TikTok's rise flattens out a bit, but interestingly, it still doesn't overtake Snapchat. The media don't talk much about Snapchat anymore because there isn't too many media crises for the press to pounce on. But actually, Snapchat's a very interesting one to look at as to helping us understand where the future of social is going to go. Anyway, that's why I always like looking at these charts, because it helps us predict the future of social. So yes, whilst Gen Z might not be a target audience for us right now, or these platforms might not be a focus for us, but this will be the largest population in the fullness of time. So yeah, that as a result, these platforms will continue to grow and become ever more popular, and will increasingly overtake the LinkedIns and Twitters and Facebooks eventually. Right, so what's new? Quick time check to see where we're at. We're on time, so all is good. So let's fire through what Facebook are doing. I've already spoken about iOS 14.5, and this is kind of a bit of a cheeky message that you might see on Facebook and Instagram. I've highlighted it here where it says, help keep Facebook or Instagram free of charge. So naturally, Facebook are starting to subtly threaten people to say, you better opt into track, or Facebook will become not free for you. So I think we're very much at the start of this, we're at the dawn of this battle between advertisers, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We're seeing tech giants kind of battle in front of us, which is going to be interesting to see how this plays out and whether ads actually have a long-term future on social. Based on some of the things I'm going to show you, this might be called into question. It's going to be very interesting. So let's dive into it anyway. Facebook are now encouraging you to read an article before sharing. This should have been commonplace, and everyone should have this practice anyway. Twitter did a similar thing, I think about last year actually. Basically says, before you share an article, have you read it? I think it's just a really useful update. Talked about live streaming, and we spoke about how much more impressions and engagement and interactions get driven through Facebook Lives. The thing that's going to drive this is that Facebook are going big on live stream e-commerce, and you're going to start to see some events related to this roll out in June. It's kind of interesting because things go full circle, right? This is like the social media manifestation of like the QVC shopping channel that you get on channel 800 on Sky or whatever, and it's fascinating to see how critical this is. A really kind of dated concept, how critical this is to the growth of social. In fact, if you look in China, their live stream e-commerce industry is worth $180 billion. It's massive. It's bigger than the whole GDP of the United Kingdom. Utterly mental. And that's all through live stream e-commerce. It's the way that people buy products in China. And for any kind of trend like this, any significant behavioral shift, always look to see what's happening in China if you're interested in kind of future gazing, because what's happening in China usually is a good predictor of what's going to happen in the Western world. So that's why Facebook are all over this. Look out for that in June. It's going to be very interesting to see how that takes. So otherwise, not too much to tell around Facebook. Instagram's a bit of a different story. So we might have all heard of the creator economy and the fact that people who are active on Instagram as creators, people that are creating content, funnily enough, they are becoming businesses in their own right. And now Instagram are responding with 3 new creator-focused products. So firstly, a marketplace to match brands with creators, a pretty simple concept here, but it's going to continue to simplify how any brand can work with other individuals that might well have more powerful influence. To be honest, this really is going to be the future of organic social, working with ambassadors, associates, influencers. I use influencers in a kind of like inverted commas because fundamentally working with people that you share a common mission, purpose and belief, and who have a great community behind them. It's those marketplaces that will help businesses, public sector or non, find those individuals to work with, because that's very much going to be the future of social, built around creators. As a result, like the fact that creators are holding so much power, and the fact that you can build businesses on social to a point where you need your shop to sell, your own shop to sell your merchandise, because you've become so well known within a community. Whether you're a live streamer, a gamer, or a baker, doesn't matter. It's just fascinating to see the amount of people creating businesses and whole industries popping up by people, monetizing their content that they've created on a social platform. So that really is charting an interesting direction in terms of the future of social. Yes, from a feature perspective, this probably doesn't mean much to many businesses, right? Why a creator can have a creator shop, that doesn't, there's nothing you can do with that information. But it does help us think about, right, where so much power is going to creators, which will bring more and more people onto social that are there to build a community so they can monetize that community later on. Those people build trust and influence, and it's that trust and influence that we as brands, businesses, public sector organizations want to try and leverage. So that's where, why creators are so important to the overall social media ecosystem as a whole. And also there's this affiliate marketplace they're building that allowing creators to get a cut of the sales they generate through posts. So once again, another way for creators to monetize their content. But yeah, overall, the kind of takeaway and the action from this is, making sure that we're thinking about, as marketers here, whether we're representing public sector, non-profits or whatever, that the influence of those creators is not to be underestimated. It should always be a factor in our strategy. Instagram Lives had some tweaks, so it makes it more Clubhouse-y, so it takes on Clubhouse more, basically. So Instagram Live with multi-person went live last month, I think it was, so that rather than an Instagram Live just being a soliloquy from one individual, you can have up to 4 people with you to have a really nice collaborative chat. It makes for much more kind of interesting debate and makes them for much more engaging live. And also, the more people you have involved in your live, the more opportunity you have to increase the reach of that content, because obviously you're teaming up with others. So what this update means is that you can now kind of mute your lines, stop your video, control things a little bit more. So it's really just like running a webinar, but on Clubhouse. On Instagram, sorry. So yeah, like running an event, but on Instagram. So that's a really good update to Instagram Live. Now, auto captions is coming to stories. Pretty simple, but really important for like the accessibility of our content, and really makes the whole process of creating and publishing stories so much easier. We don't have to use a third-party video editing tool to add subtitles, because auto captions are now live to stories, and you can see how those captions manifest and how they look. Talking about like Instagram Live becoming more Clubhousey, they're also working on the ability for you to schedule a live. So like you would for any specific event or time specific scenario, you can now start to schedule that. Really short one for LinkedIn. They have released some employee advocacy analytics. It's live now. They didn't even really announce this anyway, but if you want to find this, you can just go to your company page, go to your super admin view, look under analytics, and you can see employee advocacy analytics, where you can see those employees of yours that have shared your content, how much engagement they've got. So it's really powerful to get some form of like data and analysis, so we can help understand how our employees are performing. And as we've been talking about, the power of like user generated content, like influencers, ambassadors, we really need to use our employees as much as we can to give us a fast start in increasing our engagement. So yeah, really nice to see this, and this is free and available to everyone. So yeah, good update from LinkedIn, but that's the only one. Now, quick time check. Now, Twitter have been very busy indeed. So a couple of simple updates to start with. Twitter are no longer cropping images on your timeline. You might you might remember that when you posted images to Twitter, mostly they would cut off about halfway through. So if it was far too portrait orientated, like this example is, it would just cut off. So now it will no longer crop it, which is really good for us, and really good for us all as business owners, as marketers or whatever, because it's just going to make life so much easier when it comes to posting stuff on Twitter. Twitter's also rolling out reply prompts, and they've been promising this for a while, but it's gone live now, which basically allows people to take a breath before they respond. So this might be really good actually for those public sector organizations that maybe get a few unsavory comments either in DMs or in replies to posts. This encourages people to say, this is what you typed. Did you really mean to say that? Take a breath and think about it. You know, do I want to edit it or delete it, or do I want to send it anyway? Just that moment to check it might get people thinking, like, you know, is that really appropriate? Twitter Spaces launches, and that's the big news. So everyone now has access and ability to run a Twitter Space, provided you've got more than 600 followers. So that is good to go now. And that really has started a chain reaction of so many other updates, which we're going to cover now. So it's rolled out to Android, so you can have access to it on iOS and Android. It will be coming to the desktop soon, but just not yet. There's already that kind of took it ahead of Clubhouse. It's improved discoverability, which is a real problem for tools like this, Clubhouse in particular. Discoverability is just a nightmare. Finding really good content and really good rooms to join on Clubhouse, that's a challenge they still haven't figured out. So Twitter Spaces has kind of implemented this like purple line, that purple circle that kind of goes around those individuals that are on the space and notifies those followers who is in a space. So that helps improve it. Of course, that's still only limited then as to the people that follow you today, but it's a step in the right direction. Twitter's also adding a ticketed option. So for those audio spaces that are far more kind of event centric, where you've maybe got a really good speaker, or you really want to get people attending, you can now run a ticketed space. So which is basically charging for entry. If charging for entry is a step too far, what you can also do right now is adding scheduling and reminders. So pretty simple. Fundamentally say, you know, we're going live, we're running an event on X date, you know, book in here, and they'll get reminders here as well. So everyone has the opportunity to set their reminders. So a really nice way of like maximizing audience engagement. Twitter's also bought another newsletter subscription platform, this time called Scroll, which I won't go into too much detail right now, but fundamentally, Twitter are bolstering their subscription offering at the moment. So from last month, you might remember that Twitter are really starting to take on some of the more kind of like membership oriented platforms, things like Patreon, tools that allow you to build a smaller, more niche community. So that's where kind of Twitter orientating towards. And through Scroll, it's another step in that direction. Already Twitter newsletters are available, and it's a kind of non-paid for feature as well. So I do love the idea of like that kind of having a smaller, close-knit community where you might have your broad, you know, few thousand followers on Twitter which have casual interests, but inside you've got your kind of inner circle of maybe 500 of your core kind of key fans and engagers. And that's where I think Twitter are thinking about this correctly, because, you know, not all followers are the same. Some have more interest in your business than others. So you can kind of create that inner sanctum, if you will. Twitter's also rolling out a tip jar, which is interesting because I have no idea how this is really going to be used, to be honest. I can see this as a really good use case within like a non-profit scenario, allowing people to tip or basically donate for non-profits. But outside of that, I struggle to kind of see the use of it. So this will be one that I'll be watching carefully just to try and understand behaviors around it. And talking about monetization, because that's basically what we've been talking about for the last 3 slides, about Twitter's really starting to focus heavily on like how people can monetize the platform. So whether it's having a set smaller community that people would charge for as part of like a subscription. You might remember that from last month where we spoke about Twitter Super Follows, which allows people to pay a small monthly subscription to get exclusive content and access to things. So when you combine that with the functions around tip jar, and also now Twitter's subscription offering, which gives people a kind of premium access to Twitter, which means they have a bit more control, a whole suite of other things, have the ability to undo the sending of a tweet. Not editing a tweet, that's still not available, but you know, you could reverse the sending of it if you wanted to. There's a few other things within this, but the most interesting thing is that does this actually display a whole new path forward and a new operating model for social, where it's no longer dependent on ads, actually it's driven through subscriptions? Whether that's a subscription to the platform in its own right, or it's driven by the creator economy of people subscribing to, to certain creators or individuals. Basically, what is very exciting is that Twitter's actually, for kind of a few months ago, they were the laggards of social media, but now they're very much on the front foot, which is very exciting to me. Then we got Pinterest. So live streaming, they're going down the route of. Pinterest is so heavily driven by e-commerce, certainly in the fashion space. So for a public sector organization, it's probably not as much of a focus here in this instance. They're going big on live streaming. They've created these new idea pins, which work exactly like stories, but unlike stories in other formats, they're not ephemeral. They will stay forever. They don't go after 24 hours. Onto YouTube. YouTube are testing shorts now for UK users. Some people have access to this. I don't at the moment, but you might do. For me, this is a very interesting and exciting opportunity. So shorts is YouTube's take on TikTok. They've been testing it with certain creators in the US. Data in terms of like viewer numbers has been really strong. So if like short form video is something that you've been looking at going down the route of, maybe starting to experiment with TikTok or Snapchat or whatever, shorts should be a focal point as well, and something for you to consider, because as soon as this goes live, probably in the next month, I'm estimating that there's going to be a huge amount of impetus behind this and efforts to grow it. And talking about efforts to grow it, YouTube are investing 100 million in people creating content for shorts. So you're going to expect to see an explosion of individuals kind of starting to create content, and a lot of news and press coverage and excitement around this as a platform. Don't forget that YouTube have more monthly active users than any platform anywhere. So they represent significant opportunity. So onto Snapchat, last few ones. So they've launched their creator marketplace as well to help kind of brands and organizations work with creators. Similar concept to what we were speaking about with Instagram, really. But it's lowering the barrier of entry for brands that don't need to hire an influencer agency or anything like that, or don't have the budget. Brands can now start using these marketplaces. When I say brands, I mean any organization, public sector orgs, non-profits can start to use these marketplaces to find those individuals with whom they can work with. Snapchat's grown at a ridiculous rate. They're now at 500 million monthly active users, which takes them above LinkedIn, Twitter, and they're only 170 million behind TikTok. So the media don't cover Snapchat that much, as I said, but they should do, because I think that's possibly the most exciting platform at the moment in terms of charting the growth of the industry. So Snapchat is building the e-commerce platform of the future. They are absolutely leading on augmented reality and how people can try on clothes. So, the way that augmented reality already works on Snapchat, they've already led on that, like the whole Snapchat lenses, right, from back in the day. But like if you were looking for a new watch, you could try on the watch, for example. There's brands catalogs already, like you can do shopping on Snapchat and make purchases directly through there. So imagine that as an experience. You're kind of scrolling through your feed, you see someone that you respect and you follow while using a watch or wearing a watch that you like, and you can click through, because that watch would be tagged. Click through on that. You can then use the lens to try on the watch. You think, oh, that looks quite nice. I'll have a brown strap or whatever. And then you can make that purchase directly through Snapchat, and then you can carry on scrolling. What an unbelievable experience that is from a customer perspective of being influenced and then purchasing said product. So that's really where the future of e-commerce is going to go. So other really clever things like screenshot. So you could scan a photo of, let's just say, a lamp that you like. It will scan everything of on Snapchat and show recommendations of that product that you scanned. And like we said about in my example, shopping in the app, so that people can launch public profiles and list products they can buy with a click. This is going to be so important across all of these platforms as to how they build the next generation, how they monetize their products, because all of these platforms, particularly Snapchat, 99, no joke, of their percent of their revenue comes from ads. So for any business, that isn't healthy. You know, that's not a healthy split of revenue streams. Ads should make a proportion of it, but not 99%. Hence the reason you're seeing all of these platforms push heavily into e-commerce. Talking of TikTok, they've launched a new lead gen ad. So TikTok's advertising platform is still fairly immature, but it's gaining in maturity and now giving us as advertisers more opportunity to have different ad formats and collect data from people. Now, if anyone heard me speak last month, I spoke about, you know, the rise of remixing as a content format, popularized by TikTok through what they call duets, which essentially is taking an existing piece of content and then kind of doing your own parody or take on it. So now this is a new green screen feature, which basically allows you to kind of overlay your kind of take on a piece of content on top of like the original piece of content, right? So whether it's a dance move or whether it's, you know, a baking something, I don't know, but it really adds for like a fantastically engaging content experience. I mean, the barriers to entry of like content are rising. There's no shying away from that, unfortunately. It's no longer chucking a link out. Well, I say it's no longer. The future isn't going to be about putting a link or photo or an image out. It's going to be like, how can we create really interactive kind of content and content that you can kind of build on? And that's where duets have been such a fundamental part of TikTok's growth, because it allows themes and trends to grow, where, you know, just so happens that someone's skating down a hill drinking ocean spray, as you might remember that kind of random viral video. And there's just hundreds of thousands of videos and duets basically riffing off that same thing. People doing parodies on that, dressing up in crazy things, skating down the road, drinking something else. But it creates a whole theme, and it's where cultures are built, and that's where brands have an incredible opportunity to jump on these kinds of things. Talking about e-commerce, TikTok is moving to that next stage, really. They're a little bit behind Snapchat on this, but this is kind of TikTok's approach now. TikTok have taken a bit of a partnership approach as far as e-commerce goes at the moment, working with other partners to kind of tag products that I've seen here, or things like Shopify to allow people to add shoppable links to their TikTok posts. But now they're moving to the next stage, which is about promo tiles, which basically allows brands to have a fully kind of customizable experience of how you can create a really like outwardly promo orientated post. So as you can see, you know, advertising is starting to kind of become a bit of a secondary thing that the platforms are focusing on, whereas what their focus is like, how can we make our platforms as easy as possible for brands to start monetizing the content in their own right. So final one, Clubhouse. So a bit of a negative one on Clubhouse. Downloads falling off a cliff. App was only downloaded 900,000 times in April, down from a peak of 9.6 million. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd still take my app being downloaded 900,000 times. But in the context of where they are at their stage of the business, it should be like rocket ship orientated growth. So that doesn't look good for Clubhouse. We'll see if that changes, however, now that it's available to Android. But definitely, I think that the time has come and gone for Clubhouse as far as I'm concerned. But there we go. We're on time. We made it. So let's kind of take 5 steps of summarizing that, or 6, actually, if I could count numbers. So paid social continues to grow. So advertising costs are going up, but fundamentally, you know, the results are still there from paid. But what's going to be interesting to watch is Twitter's Blue, their subscription platform. Will that show a new route forward for social, not driven by ads, potentially? That's actually a very interesting, just a general theme that's not going to manifest within the next year or so, but you're going to start to see a general trend, and that's kind of interesting to see. There's lots of pivotal things that are happening in social at the moment, so fascinating to see what's going to go on. Facebook and Twitter, we were speaking about subscriptions. We were talking about kind of smaller communities. Does that offer more opportunity for deeper engagement? There's more marketplaces, more creator funds. We're talking about that $100 million fund for YouTube Shorts, for example. The creator economy is absolutely a thing, and brands absolutely need to tap into that and understand that for them to stay relevant in the space, because it's only going to bring more creators, more people with more influence. And rather than brands trying to fight against those influencers for kind of a share of voice and for us to be heard as brands in the melee of everything that's going on, why don't we work with creators that have that influence, that have the trust, so we can connect with them better? And those marketplaces will help us do that. E-commerce is going to present a new dawn for live streaming. Clearly, live streaming is more engaging than I've ever given it credit for, as we saw from the data from the first slide. But actually, e-commerce is going to light a fire under live streaming, that's for sure. And yeah, keep an eye on Snapchat, because they are the ones that are very much leading the way for social media platform innovation and growing tremendously as a result. And are forecast to be the most frequently used platform for Gen Zers, which as a result will then bring forward the growth of that platform as that generation evolves and matures. So there we go. We are done. So back to you in the studio, Joanne.
Andy, I'm just taking a breath for you there. The guys on LinkedIn, and we're live on LinkedIn for the very first time, thanks to the guys at LinkedIn who gave me LinkedIn. I got third time lucky with my approval for LinkedIn Live, so that made my week last week. So hi to all of you watching there. Yeah, everybody's saying so many insights this month, Andy. You really need a run through every 30 days to try and keep up. So thankfully we have you to do it for us. I mean, I was writing some notes as you were going through this to try and round it up and to start our little discussion around it. But it seems to me like it's all the C's this month. We have commerce, we have community, we have conversation with the live streams and the biggest engagement rates and opportunities with Facebook Live, and then Instagram stepping into multi-live conversations as well. Creators and creativity, and you're really going to get rewarded for being a creator. And yeah, culture, and actually there was more C's. There was culture and conversation. What I love about this segment with you each month is that while I'm really interested in what's happening in the world of social, I'm also fascinated by the change in consumer and citizen behavior, because the data and the availability of that behavior to the social networks allows us as brands and then public sector organizations to really think about how they should be approaching their social strategy. Question for you: what do you think the big takeaway from a government point of view is when it comes to Facebook? Now, Facebook is the big public facing platform along with its sister platform, Instagram. But let's start with Facebook here. Do you think that going live is something that should be integral in somebody's Facebook strategy?
Great question. It's a very broad question to answer. I would say don't go live unless you've got a very valid reason. There's a good judge as to any live stream you see. If you ever hear, "Hey guys, I just thought I would go live," to switch off because you haven't planned anything. A Facebook Live should be organized as well as you organize your events. For example, Joanne, they're planned, they're scheduled in, everyone knows what to expect. And if you take that approach to it, then absolutely, provided Facebook is just another platform that allows us to broadcast live. We've chosen our mediums for this one, and the content that we're talking about fits very nicely into a live stream. Whatever platform we want to put that on is kind of moot, to be honest, because it's about trying to expand our reach. So as the more platforms we can broadcast to, like for example today we've got LinkedIn rolling into it, the more reach we have. So we'll take that as a win. But in terms of like Facebook live streaming in particular, it's just something to think about really. If we've got a dedicated event, we've got something that lends itself to that kind of format, then yes, absolutely, it should be part of our strategy. Secondly, about Facebook though, because naturally it's where a lot of public sector organizations, probably biggest audiences are, One thing that we will cover next month, because there wasn't enough data to cover this month, what we'll cover next month is actually Facebook are laying out their kind of newsletter and subscription orientated strategy, which is similar to what's happened on LinkedIn and Twitter. And that's, for me, I think that's going to be very interesting for public sector orgs, because then it allows you to kind of condense your maybe broad Facebook reach into the ones that truly care, build a community, you know, a really kind of core level in the same way that you have within, you know, your multiple Facebook groups, for example, Joanne. So yeah, that's a long answer, but I think there'll be more to come on that next month, that's for sure.
The remixing opportunities on TikTok and now available on Instagram too, that really allows people to respond to trends and to bring your own company's culture as well. But I saw a fascinating one on Instagram this morning, and it was from Greater Manchester Police.
Oh, yeah.
They were remixing one of these trending dance. Now, I won't replicate the dance here because I do want to save my good old online rep, you know. But what he did was the officer was standing like this, broad-shouldered and chest out. And the guys on the left of the screen were like doing this dance. And the guys were saying, here's 5 steps to learn this dance. And actually what the officer from Greater Manchester Police was saying, here are 5 steps to online grooming. And they were bringing up the points that you should be aware of. And I thought it was really clever. And so often public sector will say to me, these features are great, Joanne, but we're just not ready. And again, my kind of way around it is, you might not be ready, but your audience is ready. And they are going to trusted sources who can be relevant and can step onto platforms and embrace features that are trending and are current. There's still a huge fear around being front off screen. And would you agree that the platforms are really pushing for more people to be visible? Because that human touch, right? It's maybe easier to listen to us rather than if we transcribe the whole 60 minutes of a conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as these platforms are evolving into, you know, TikTok, Snapchat. There isn't really a brand profile. It's not like the days of Twitter where you have your company page, your profile, your personal profile. It's one and the same, and that's really challenging. And like, for example, that the Greater Manchester Police sounds a brilliant example. But things like that can only be possible where they've clearly hired someone younger, maybe an intern or something like that, into their organization, or someone within their team is a native TikTok user and spends their time on it. And it's only if you have those kind of people do you feel like you could do that. Because I mean, I'll be honest, I talk about all of these changes and updates and, you know, the exciting growth and stuff. I don't spend any time on TikTok. It's not my thing. I'm not publishing anything that my dance moves are only in front of my kids, no one else. So, and that's why in our business, if we were going to take a real serious stab at TikTok, I'd probably hire someone on a contract basis who spends their whole life doing TikTok, right? So, and I think that's a different kind of mindset and approach to it, rather than just thinking, all right, it's just another thing I've got to do and I'm already an overly burdened marketer. There is a lot of people out there that can help as well. So, you know, it's big communities out there if you want to take this platform seriously, which I think certainly for public sector organizations, and talk about engagement, certainly in a younger demographic, you know, you're going to have to.
Well, I swiftly sent them a DM on Instagram. I'm not sure they'll ever respond to me. I will go through the press official email address, but saying, listen, I love this Instagram reel. I'm hosting the summit in September. I'm looking for some case studies. Would you guys be interested? Because the thing with public sector is if they can see their peers doing it, then it's almost like they feel like they've got permission to do it. And so they're more willing. But another thought I had as you were going through the raft of changes this month, Andy, was that the social networks almost feel like the whole gamut of digital marketing, from awareness to engagement to video to content marketing to PPC to commerce. to email marketing. It's like they are really disrupting even digital marketing as we know it right now.
Yeah, you made some really good observations. I love all of the C's you mentioned at the start, and and in terms of that, you're 100% right. Yes, I think as businesses though, just a bit of kind of counter to everything that I've said is like, we do need to be mindful about over investing in a platform too. So the kind of polar opposite of everything that I've been saying is like, try and have, my general rule of thumb is try and have like 3 platforms at the most that you're kind of well known or active on. Definitely not having one, because it's about diversity of it, reach and such. Because there's nothing to say that you wouldn't post something one day that oversteps, say, a terms of service kind of thing or whatever it might be, and you get blocked, and that's it, and you're off. So definitely having diversity in terms of different platforms, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, whatever those 3 are, and then also just never underestimating the power of your newsletter and owning that data and subscriber base, because the social platforms are really, really powerful. And it's just about like, we can utilize that power as long as we're kind of cognizant as to how much power we give them as well.
And one trend that I noted only a couple of days ago, so you'll probably cover it next month, is that Twitter announced that they are bringing back verification and the blue tick. And obviously it hasn't appeared on account tab soon, so it didn't make the cut for this month. But very interestingly, I noted that first on their list of people and brands getting the blue tick and verification were government. So I thought that was a brilliant development. They are saying that we want our users to have trusted sources that they can go to. Verification has been like parked for about 2 years. What's your opinion on them bringing it back? Because in the early days, people were getting blue ticks just for a quick application, and I'm sorry I missed that boat because I'm still looking for mine.
I'm with you, and I'm going to read a bit more and wait to see what happens a bit more before I pass too much judgment on it, because everyone fell over themselves to be verified on Twitter, to be honest. And it's one of those things you can get lost in something like that and taken away from what you should be doing, because it's you can get verified, but it's no guarantee of success at all. Yes, a blue tick is a mark of a trusted source. So yes, government, public sector, it should be a factor, and we'll cover it, as you say, next month in more depth. But as far as I'm concerned, it's like there is no easy way. There's no one quick magic bullet that will solve anything in social. It's just about chugging away with a consistent strategy, and we will make it in time. Unfortunately no silver bullets here, but that's the way to grow a nice sustainable strategy.
Great. You just added another scene there for me now, consistency. I'm sure, like me, you always get asked, okay, so what's the 3 things that I need to do to be successful on social? And one line that I give to my students and my clients, well, it's my clients, I'm helping them execute and implement, but it's for my students, I'm going, guys, I can preach to you all day long and I can give you the top trends and tactics, but until you implement it and you take that action and you come back to me in like 60 or 90 days with the results, it's only then can we have the conversation about what works, because everybody's organization is different, right?
Exactly that. And I can't add any more to that. It's like anything in life, there's lots of people that want to know, oh, how do I do this quickly or whatever, but usually those people that are asking, the ones that they know what they need to do, they just need to start, and they just haven't because they lack the courage to start. And there's nothing else I can say about that other than it's social media is a fantastic playground to actually just try things and see how they work, because in the early days it's going to take a long time for you to get noticed by more than a handful of people. So it's as we've both known from growing digital businesses, it's just some days it is kind of soul destroying. You look and go, well, that didn't work. But as long as we carry on and see progress over the longer term. And just as a kind of final point over this is that one thing we've implemented in our business, because we run like a return on investment reports on our organic content marketing, and we refuse to do any analysis, even up to a month, because it's not enough data for content to mature. So we only run 90-day analysis now. So only once a quarter will we truly evaluate our organic content performance, because only after you've seen that mature over a longer period of time. When I talk about organic, I'm talking about lots of stuff like webinars, blogs, all emails, all of that stuff. When you evaluate all of that together over 90 days, then it starts to paint a very different picture, because in the moment you post something, expect results, you don't get immediate results. It's not like paid media. It's not like, firing a gun. It's about a case of having belief in what you do and saying, right, I think this is the right strategy for me based on research and data understanding. And in 90 days from now, I will evaluate this in depth, and I can then make a strategic call off the back of it. But that's our view on this.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. And actually, you mentioned that last month, and I think that I also mentioned it to one of my classes. 90 days and building that digital momentum curve is so, so important. Andy, as always, it's a massive pleasure to have you join us from Content Cal. Where can people find out more and maybe try out your own platform, your content marketing platform?
Yeah, well, you can always follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Andy Lambert. And in terms of Content Cal, you'll find us on contentcal.io. And yeah, you can take a free trial if you want to have a play around. But otherwise, you can follow me on LinkedIn because I talk about this stuff all the time, or you can just join us again next month.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much for all of you for joining us this month, and particularly on LinkedIn, because it's great now to have the live feature here. Andy, you have a great day, and
Actually, too.
I don't know how you get your work done on days like this where you're doing this roundup, so thank you very much.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right. Lovely to see you. Speak to you soon.
All right. Bye, everyone. See ya.